Well, I actually think everybody wants to make a difference. Sometimes we get trapped in situations that kind of prevent that. And it is frustrating, but maybe we have to simply say we can make a difference. Every day is a gift, and it's kind of like we have a lot of people to show appreciation for that.
Today, we interview behavioural psychologist Dr. E. Scott Geller, a professor of psychology at Virginia Tech, also the founder of Actively Caring. We talk about procrastination, serving others, and community. Let's jump into the video. For those who don't know, just introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Scott Geller, professor of psychology at Virginia Tech in the USA. I've been here. I'm starting my 52nd year. So I've been here a long time. I was born and raised in Allentown, Pennsylvania. My dad was a doctor. My mother was a nurse, and everybody thought that I was going to be a real doctor and a real doctor, an MD. And I went to college. I was in pre-med, and I was thinking medicine all along. But as I learned more about psychology, I got more interested in the people side, and and the human dynamics. That's a word we use, human dynamics. And I ended up, when I graduated from the College of Worcester in Ohio, I had a choice: med school or graduate school. And I must say that in graduate school, they offered me a graduate teaching assistant, so it wouldn't cost my parents any money. So that probably got me started. And then, by the way, I need to say one more thing. All my life, even when I was in high school, no, elementary school even, people would say, Scott, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? And I would say, I'm not sure, but I want to make a difference. And then they say, well, you better get a good grades in high school if you're going to make a difference. And then I graduate from high school. What do you want? I make a difference. You better go to college. And so I went to college, and then the same lesson. Well, you go to graduate school. So, but that still is kind of like my mission. I want, I'm up in age now, and I appreciate the fact that we can spread the news. It's all about dissemination. We call it psychological science. We have the science of human dynamics. We know about motivation, for example. Not these pop psychologists. Again, I could riddle off these pop psychologists, books by journalists, a book by a lawyer, a book called Drive by a lawyer. He doesn't understand motivation, but I'm frustrated. And maybe you can tell by my tone, I'm frustrated, Jordan, because I've been here and in the ivory tower trying to make a difference. Oh, yeah, we teach students, and that's great. But what about the real world that needs to know about human dynamics? I've been in the safety field for like 40 plus years, trying to teach organizations how to keep their workers safe. And it's more than just following rules. It's more than passing a rule and then enforcing it, like in our country, click it or ticket, buckle up or get a ticket. It's more than that. If you want people to be engaged in the process, we have to get beyond just rules and negative consequences if you don't follow those rules. And so that's where I've been. So right now, you might say that my mission is through folks like yourself is to get the word out so we can teach the world psychology for human welfare, psychological science to make the world a better place.
It's funny when you say specifically to motivation, like journalists and the commercial side coming into it, the message is lost completely. And I think it leaves people in a worse situation than where they were before. So for me, to be able to speak to somebody like yourself, where we can make a connection and we can break it down in a much better way, where someone can consume that and use that for themselves, means everything. So thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. I am interested What do you think it was that made you feel like you wanted to make a difference? Like, can you pin that down, or is it just born with it, or?
Well, I actually think everybody wants to make a difference, you know? I mean, everybody wants to do something significant, something useful. I think really we do. And sometimes we get trapped in situations that kind of prevent that. You know, Dale Carnegie wrote a book in 1936, and he said, well, the book was How to Win Friends and Influence People. Very popular book. And the principle there was everybody wants to feel important. So making a difference connects to feeling important. And for me, of course, it was because of my background. All of us have different backgrounds. You know, an auto mechanic makes a difference when he fixes a vehicle for a customer. You know, we all make a difference in our way. And but my frustration is I know how to make a difference in human dynamics, but the world doesn't know, you know? And I want my students not only to learn the stuff so they can do well on an exam, I want them to learn it and believe it and teach others because it is about making the world a better place.
100%. So our thing when we're talking about making films and doing these interviews and the YouTube videos is to inspire change. So in a like, and it's just another way of saying make a difference. Like it really does mean everything to us. Really important, really important. I don't know where to start with all the things, so I'll just go to the top of the list. So, and this one's really interesting to me, and it does link on to the idea of making a difference, and that's serving others. And I think that's one that's completely lost, especially in motivation and people trying to become successful. Serving others is just something that people do not consider at all.
Serving others. That
Yeah,
was, oh,
yeah.
well, you know, and it's been getting worse. We in our country, we seem to be more self-serving than ever before. And in Facebook and social media doesn't help that any. But let's go back to some psychology. You know, it was Abraham Maslow who came up with something called the hierarchy of needs, of human needs. And I bet many of your listeners have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's very basic. It's we satisfy our physiological needs, then we satisfy our safety and security. And the theory was that you climb this ladder, you feel safe and secure. Now I can worry about my social needs, my connections with others. And then we get to self-esteem, feeling worthwhile. That's back we talked about earlier, feeling that we've made a difference, worthwhile. And then we get to the top. And I wonder if some of your listeners are thinking that the top is self-actualization. And that's the way it's been taught for years. My introductory psychology textbook, the course that I teach about 1,000 students every semester. The top of that ladder, people believe it's self-actualization. I remember asking my professor back in graduate school, what is self-actualization? And his response is, it's believing that you've made a difference. It's believing that you've done all you wanted to do in your life. And then he looked me square in the eyes and he said, and Geller, I don't think you'll ever get there. And he was right. But this is the lesson here. Maslow passed away in 1970. Before he passed, he said he was wrong. He said the top of that hierarchy of needs is not about self. Think about it. I have enough food. I have friends. So I have self-esteem. I am self-actualized. He said the top is exactly what you said, Jordan. He called it self-transcendence, going beyond yourself for somebody else. His last book was published by his wife in 1971 called The Farthest Reaches of Human Nature. And it's all about going beyond yourself for others. Now, let's think about that for a minute. You said serving others. How about if we sat back and realized, how do you feel when you serve others? You know, when you reach out and help others. In fact, you're doing it right now, my friend. You're serving others by teaching others some basic principles to make their life better. Well, How does it make you feel? I mean, that fuels the other levels of the hierarchy. It influences your social influence, influence your self-esteem, might influence self-actualization. So if people just believe that, felt that, and followed that, in our country, it's what, July 4th. We celebrate independence, Declaration of Independence. No, it should be interdependence. The Declaration of Interdependence. We're all in this together and we need each other. And we all have different skills to contribute, whatever. And if we just appreciate that, if we appreciate the diversity of people and how, if we can bring people together, diverse individuals with diverse skills together and work for a common cause, human welfare, what a better world we would have.
I completely agree, and like just talking about the feeling that you get from it is just, yeah, more than anything, it really is. My worry is, somebody who's caught in the selfishness, caught in my world, it's self-made, and this is like a huge thing about being self-made and just being selfish to succeed. How would you tell them to move over to sort of helping others and trying to serve others?
Well, it's a mindset, isn't it? It's you got to start just thinking about it and realizing it. Here's a research project we did recently. We're measuring how many pedestrians in a crosswalk, when the cars have stopped for them, how many pedestrians wave a simple thank you. Thank you for stopping. Perhaps you won't be surprised, but it's under 10%. 7.5%. The rest of them just walk on, not even realize that somebody just stopped their vehicle for you to cross the road. And I guess how it relates to the point you just made is maybe we have to stop and reflect. Gratefulness. There's a field of psychology that I've been studying. It started by Martin Seligman about 20 years ago, called positive psychology. Now, when people think of psychology, they think of the negative side, helping people who are emotionally distraught, helping the bad side. But there's a good side. What makes people happy? And Marty Seligman started this field about 2000, called positive psychology. And part of positive psychology, just one piece of it, is gratitude, feeling gratitude and expressing gratitude. And research has shown that when you express gratitude, you feel better yourself. So it's kind of like the answer to your question might have, maybe people just have to try it. Try it. When you cross the road, a simple thing like that, just thank that driver, man. Just give them a thumbs up, and they might give you a thumbs up back. And my point is a greater appreciation of what we have and what other people do for us and what you do for others.
How do you not get lost with this? Because I feel like I'm the type of guy who will wave at the people who stop. But I would say recently there was a certain situation where I lost the feeling of gratitude, and I maybe bought into my ego a little bit more. What sort of techniques, or what do you do to sort of make sure you don't fall into those feedback loops and like a negative feedback loop?
Well, you have to realize, why did you fall in a negative? Maybe it was because you waved and there was no response. Or maybe, as a driver, it really blows me away. I am more tuned into this now than ever before. I'll pull up and I'll watch these people walk, and I'll roll down my window and I'll say, "You're welcome." So must admit that I am more tuned into this and maybe more aware. And it is frustrating, but maybe we have to simply say, we can make a difference. Simple gratitude. And by the way, how about if we're more grateful? I'm grateful that I'm still here. After 80 years, I'm still here, and I'm talking. What I want, every day is a gift. And it's kind of like we have a lot of people to show appreciation for that, but we do get into this routine. We get into this win-lose mindset. I'm a winner and I'm fighting. It seems to be too much win-lose in our world today. And I think it takes leaders to step up and say, I'm gonna tweak it, man. It's not a big deal, but I'm just gonna try to show more positivity.
I love that. Yeah, when we talk about inspiring change, it doesn't have to be like a grand gesture. It literally can be opening a door for somebody, and just leading the way with that. So I really do love that, and it can be done on any scale whatsoever. I feel like this links into this, and is the consequences. And you talk about consequences a lot. I feel like when you talk about consequences, it's slightly different to what most people in the context most people use. So I'd love to hear about it.
Well, B.F. Skinner is one of my heroes, and his legacy to us, three words: selection by consequences. Now, people will say, "Oh, he worked with rats and pigeons," but he worked with a basic contingency of we do stuff for consequences. If you think about it, how much of the behavior you do throughout the day is because you expect to get something or you expect to avoid something aversive. Now, I think your point is well taken. When people think of consequences, they think of negative. A consequence is something negative. What a shame, because we do use more negative consequences in our world to control behavior instead of positive consequences. But when I say consequences, I'm thinking positive, man. I'm thinking of positive consequences. I ask my students, first day of class, how many are here to avoid failure? 80% raise their hand, man, 80%. And I say, well, I'm glad you're here. You were motivated by the consequence of avoiding failure. But how do you feel about that? Is it a requirement? Was this class a requirement or was this class an opportunity? Did you wake up to an alarm clock or an opportunity clock? I mean, what is your mindset? So again, my point is, if we simply think about, I'm working to gain, I'm working to get, I'm working to improve. And by the way, I like the word improve over change, because change is kind of threatening. I don't want to change, but do you want to improve? Do you want to do better? Do you want to be the best you can be? Of course we do. And so again, but we can't get away from it. Consequences. Now, some people use the word reward, and some people, in fact, use the word reinforcement. And that's a technical word, and people have to realize that B.F. Skinner used the word reinforcement, and his followers do. But reinforcement is a procedure of using positive consequences to influence behavior. If the behavior increases as a result of that consequence, you can call it positive reinforcement. So I just say positive consequence. Sometimes I work for a positive consequence, but it doesn't affect my behavior. But it's still a mindset. It's where I'm going.
How do you learn to get the mindset to a positive place over the negative place?
Well, we don't have to learn it, do we? Because we know it. I mean, in fact, your common sense says, yeah, I feel better when I'm working for something positive. If I change and say, I'm going to this class tomorrow to learn, that will change my whole perspective. I'm writing this paper for this class so I can learn rather than avoid failing. So we don't have to learn about the value of positive consequences, but we just have to start experiencing them, don't we? We have to start, again, we get back to gratitude. When you wave to that driver, you're giving them a positive consequence, a simple positive. When you say thank you, when you give somebody a smile, that's a positive consequence. If you just reflect and say, so how did that make you feel? How did it make you feel? Do it again. So I appreciate the fact that, yeah, perhaps we have to learn that it feels good to focus on positive rather than negative consequences. Here's a word that we have to get in touch with. The word is feedback. And if your boss tells you, or your friend tells you, can I give you some feedback? How does that make you feel? What are you thinking? Oh man, it's going to be negative. He's going to tell me I screwed up, I didn't do a good job. That would be called corrective feedback. And we do need that. But what if we had a different mindset? What if feedback is showing support? No, it's not about calling you out for your mistakes. It's about appreciating what you've done and explaining what I saw you do that was particularly special. What if we had a world that gave more supportive feedback, or call it a positive consequence, than corrective or negative feedback? What if we all did that more? Imagine the improvement in our attitude, in our mindset. Simple change.
Do you think there's something to self-talk? So, yeah, creating these sort of developing that mindset through self-talk.
Oh yeah, great word, man. Now, the behaviorists call it covert behavior. Overt behavior is stuff I can see. Covert behavior is talking to yourself. Oh, absolutely. And by the way, we mentioned positive psychology. Positive psychology is all about futuristic thinking. I mean, yes, the past influences our behavior, but thinking about what's happening tomorrow or what I have to look forward to, that's happiness, man. And so it is all about self-talk. You have to talk to yourself. You have to, in behavioral science, we talk about the ABC model: antecedent conditions, behavior, the B, and the C, consequences. Now, your self-talk can be an antecedent. That is, you can tell yourself, I need to do this. You need to remind yourself, I need to remember to do this. That would be an antecedent self-talk. And after you do it, thank yourself, man. Hey, I did okay. Thank yourself. And that would be the consequence. So that's brilliant. How you talk to ourselves is critical. And it fits right into our discussion here. I mean, we don't always talk about self-motivation. How do we motivate ourselves? Now we know what the research says about self-motivation. We feel more self-motivated when we perceive some choice. I don't have to do this. I get to do this. I have some choice. I didn't have to. And then we feel competent. Another C word. When we're competent at doing worthwhile work, what I'm doing is making a difference, and I'm pretty good at it. How do I know? Because somebody gave me some feedback. My boss told me I did that pretty well. So that's supportive feedback. That's the C word. And then the other C word I use is community, a sense of togetherness. So my point is, how do we deal with those? It takes self-talk, doesn't it? I have to say to myself, yeah, this is a community in which we're working, and what I'm doing is helping others. And I am pretty good at this. And my point is, we see our world, then we talk to ourselves about what we perceive, and that can influence whether we're motivated or not.
I love it. I really like that breakdown. So that specifically is the one that I feel can help a lot of people. Like, just if they can take that on board, I really hope people can. I want to talk about a situation where I know a lot of people find themselves in, and that's like a procrastination, and just sort of advice for people breaking that mold.
Yeah, and I've heard there's a pop psychologist. I won't mention her name, but she's got 26 million views, and her response to what you just said, she calls it the 5-second rule. And I mean, and all it is count to five, and you better do it before you get to five. I mean, all I'm telling you is people are looking for a quick fix. to help them get motivated. And what is procrastination? Procrastination is putting off something that you ought to do. Now, some procrastination occurs because something else is taking the place of what we ought to do, right? We're texting, we're watching TV, we're doing something else where we should be doing this other thing. So it might not be called procrastination. It simply is behavioral substitution. We're going for a behavior. Here's another word we have to introduce. Going for behavior that has intrinsic consequences. When I say intrinsic, I mean natural consequences. I don't have somebody giving me feedback. When I push those keys on my phone, I get a natural consequence. When I'm reading a book, I'm getting a natural consequence from what I'm reading. So that's why behaviors that have natural positive consequences sometimes take over for behaviors where, why are we procrastinating? Well, those behaviors might not have clear, soon, certain, immediate positive consequences. Sometimes it takes, here's another word, emotional intelligence. We have to kind of think about, I'm not getting something really, this is not fun to do right here. Working on this paper is not fun, but in the future, it will be. That it's bringing me something in the future. So here's a challenge. Can we delay an immediate positive consequence, even that ice cream, for a behavior that has a delayed, but actually a bigger consequence? So when we talk about procrastination, we have to really understand, what do we mean by that? What are we doing when we're procrastinating? Are we going for the soon, certain, natural, intrinsic consequence, like the video game? Or can we talk to ourselves? Now we're back to talking to ourselves. Can we say, I can do that later. Right now, it's not fun, but it will be important because there's a bigger consequence if I get through this task now.
How do you get people to tune in to the end goal versus immediate satisfaction?
Interesting you say that. How do you get people? Now, when you tell me, how do you get people to do it? Now we're talking about extrinsic consequences, right? Now, how do you get workers to do their job? Extrinsic consequences, money, bonuses, and so forth. But the other side is, how do we get ourselves to do it? Now we're talking about self-talk again. So it's we need both. I mean, one of the topics I talk about frequently is leadership versus management. We use these terms interchangeably, but I suggest there's a difference. We manage behavior and we lead people. Think about it. What do managers do? Managers hold people accountable with consequences. They keep score. And so in a sense, if you're going to be managed, it means that your behavior is managed by extrinsic control. But at the same time, when you lead people, by the way, managers, they're assigned their position. I'm a manager, and we need managers. I'm not belittling managers. I need managers in my life, but everybody can be a leader. What's a leader do? Leaders inspire others to be self-motivated. They inspire motivation in others. Back to the C words. I can inspire people by helping them perceive that they have choice, competence, and community. I can also inspire people by helping them with this term empowerment. Right? Empowerment. What does that mean? Some managers use the word empowerment. I empower you. I give you more to do with fewer resources. Just get her done. But the real meaning of empowerment is answering yes to 3 questions. First question, can you do it? The job you're going to, procrastination can happen because I just don't know how to do the job, man. You know, I'm procrastinating because I'm not sure of what to do. That's one possibility. The other word is, okay, can you do it? Say yes, okay, I can do it. I've been trained, I know what to do. Next word is, will it work? So will it work means, does doing this job connect to the bigger mission? We said make a difference earlier. Will doing this job make a difference? Make a positive difference in somebody's life or in my life? Answer yes. Now, a leader can help people answer yes to these questions. Here's the third one. By the way, that first one was a training question. The second question is education. Sometimes I have to educate you, maybe show you data that this behavior will lead to this mission, this consequence. See, we're back to consequence. You can't get away from consequences. The third one is really about consequences. Yes or no, is it worth it? So if I know what to do, I believe that what I'm going to do is going to get me to where I want to go. Get back. This is getting beyond procrastination, by the way. I can empower myself by saying, yeah, I know what to do. Or if I don't, I better look up, get on the internet and figure out how to do this. And then will it work? What I'm asked to do, is this going to help me or help somebody? And then the third question, is it worth it? Boy, and you answer these three, yes, I feel empowered, I'm going to stop procrastinating.
What's the best way for myself to inspire people to be self-motivated?
Ooh, well, that depends on your situation, Jordan, right? Some depends on where you're at, and it depends who that somebody is. What if it's a young child, it depends. For example, you want this child to wear a certain outfit to go to school. Some parents would say, you're wearing it, put it on. But if you want the kid to be motivated, you say, you pull out two outfits. Which one you want? As a parent, you're satisfied with both, but the kid is getting to choose. I mean, that's a simple example, but again, that's with a child, and that's a situation with getting him to dress up for school. I mean, a lot depends on the situation as to what technique you would use. I mean, competence. Boy, you have opportunities every day to tell somebody you did that well. And that's a start. But what did I do well? Well, I've been watching you, and the way you did such and such was special. And in fact, you taught me something by doing it that way. Whoa, huh? That gives me a sense of competence. And so we have opportunities all day long to do that. I walk along to campus and I see the janitorial staff sweeping the sidewalks, and I don't hesitate to say thank you. And by the way, they're shocked. What? I said, thank you. You're making this place look good. I say this to the janitorial staff all the time. Thanks for making this place look organized and neat. But the point is, what did I just do? It was a simple little statement of gratitude, but did it maybe influence their sense of competence and their self-motivation? So every time you show gratitude, we also demonstrating community, a sense of we're in this together, folks. We're all in this together. So when you cross the street, you pedestrians, and you just seem to care about yourself, how about think about the big picture? That guy stopped for you. He stopped for you. He's using a gasoline while you're crossing the street. Anyway, that's a simple example, but it happens to us every day. Sometimes it's these things that happen on a daily basis that make us realize, wow, there's an opportunity. I missed that opportunity. I could have said something. When I go to the pharmacy, I finally found a pharmacy that I really like. I don't hesitate to tell them, when they call me up and say your prescription is ready. Man, I don't just pay for that. I have to tell them. I have to tell them that I've lived a long time and I've been to many pharmacies. You guys are the best. And they smile. I mean, what have I done? I've just a little boost in their self-confidence, a little boost in their sense of competence. So every day we have opportunities to do that.
I love it. I love showing like, yeah, for me, I mean, it is something that I feel like we all need to remind ourselves of as well. Like showing gratitude. It's so well, maybe it's just me, but falling into that of not doing it. Yeah. When the opportunities arise, I feel like after this, I'm going to have to go out and make sure that I'm showing my gratitude a bit more. With the gratitude, I feel like you're giving people confidence. Like you're talking about confidence. How do we gain self-confidence?
Ooh, self-confidence, huh? Or self-competence, right?
Yeah.
Self-competence, same thing. I
Yep.
mean, when I believe I'm competent at something, well, how do you do that? The word we use is supportive feedback. That is, again, it's like gratitude. When somebody tells me, I like the way you did that. By the way, it's also important to be humble and to say, thank you. How could I improve? What could I have done to be any better? So let's say this to ourselves: I can always do better. Everybody can improve. I do a lot of editing of student papers and I write all over the papers and so forth. And I'm hoping that they can see that this is just improvement. This is not somebody telling me I'm incompetent. It's simply there's always room for improvement. And of course, but that's something that's tough sometimes to realize. If I've been raised only on negative consequences, it's sometimes tough to feel competent. It's easier said. This is all easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although there are simple things we can do.
One of the things I was interested in is a lot of people, we get this a lot at the moment, is people dealing with fear, especially on like a journey to what they perceive to be success or a goal, achieving a goal. The talk of fear comes up quite a lot.
Huh. Fear. Well, now we're back to avoiding a negative consequence, aren't we? We either work to gain a positive consequence or we work to avoid a negative consequence. Now, what about fear? Well, what's the cause of that fear? Let's get back to empowerment. Maybe I don't know exactly what to do. So maybe I don't feel empowered. Why don't you feel empowered? I'm not exactly sure what the behavior should be in this situation. So the source of fear can come from many places, but often it can simply be, I'm not sure what to do, or I'm not sure it's all worth it, man. I'm not doing all this stuff. What for? Where's the consequence? Related to what we've been talking, we can act ourselves into thinking differently, or we can think ourselves, self-talk, into acting differently. Goes both ways. So if someone says, how can I feel more competent? How about if you acted more competent? How about if you just took on an air of confidence, and maybe, but again, humility too. I have to be open for feedback to improve. And when someone gives you feedback, you have to have the integrity to adjust. How about this? We also have to have the courage to give feedback. I said I worked in the safety world. We started something called behavior-based safety, and it's really a worldwide phenomenon. Simple thing. Workers on the job come up with a checklist of what is safe and what's not safe. Now, OSHA didn't do that. I mean, the safety professional didn't come up with that list. The workers came up with that list. What is safe and what's at risk? And then they developed this list, and then they watch each other one-on-one, peer-to-peer observation. They got the checklist and they check safe, safe, because they have listed how you're lifting, where are you standing, what are you wearing. And then here's the big one. Then you have to give them feedback. And many companies avoid that part because that's easier said than done. But now we're talking about communication. Now we're talking about feedback. Now we're talking about helping people feel competence. So I show, thank you. You did this well, this well, this well. And then I get to something that was not so safe. They were at risk. How do I deal with that? How do I give them corrective feedback? Well, we have to be, and here's the technical word, humanistic. We can't just say, hey, you did that wrong. That's wrong. That's a turnoff. Instead, we simply have to say, is there a safer way to do this? Or why did you do it that way? Again, learning how to communicate with people can help them accept your feedback and then do better next time.
It's so funny you say that. We've our team's just expanded here, so we've just got a lot bigger, and feedback has been a huge thing that we're working on right now, and it is difficult. It really is difficult to. I find it very easy to do the positive feedback, but the feedback where we need to improve on is a lot more difficult to give out, and I think. But it's more important as well, in my opinion, at the moment, especially when it's lacking. So definitely something I need to work on myself for sure.
Yeah, and the technical word, by the way, is humanistic behaviorism.
Okay.
So improving behavior through feedback is behaviorism. But humanism means considering the person's feelings, considering empathy is a big word for humanistic. So if you were doing this incorrectly, if it were you, how would you want the person to give you feedback? What would you accept? And so all of a sudden, when you give corrective feedback, see it from the other person's perspective.
I love that. That will really help. That's fantastic. Um, Everything that we've spoken about, I think, especially when it's the self-talk stuff, and even helping others and helping to inspire others, requires the mindfulness. It really and exercising that at all times. So how can we do that? How important is it to all of this?
Mindfulness. By the way, I must confess, I lose mindfulness all the time. I get into the routine. So it becomes just, I'm not thinking. I'm just doing it, I'm not thinking now, I'm doing this. For the simple thing of putting on a safety belt in your car. Some people claim it's a habit. No, habits are reflexive. Habits are doing things without thinking, and we do it all the time. And that's when we will forget. The same stimulus situation is not there, so the reflexive behavior doesn't happen. That's why it's important to talk to yourself, even with putting on a safety belt. It's not a seat belt, by the way, folks, it's a safety belt. It's not a seat belt. They went out with hoop skirts. The seat belt was down. This is a shoulder strap. It's for we should call them life belts. Our language does, talk about self-talk. Our language makes a difference. What words are we using? Quickly, the word accident is wrong. When you say I had an accident, that means you had no control. The 3-year-old comes to the room, he had an accident in his pants, he smelled something funny. You meant he couldn't help it. And most of the time, it's not a traffic accident, a traffic crash. But that's language. But it's important because that's our self-talk. That influences our motivation. So the point is, how we talk influences what we do. So we have to be mindful of the words we're using when we're speaking. What are we using? Not only to others, but to ourselves. And sometimes we get, again, one more time, we get into the routine without thinking. And all of a sudden, I forgot something. I lost something. How many of your listeners have misplaced their cell phone? Because they just put it down And they didn't say to themselves, I just put it here. And so they go on, and now they're wondering, where's my cell phone? Hey, call me, will you, so I can hear where my cell phone is. It's not an easy thing to always be mindful. But, and let me say one more thing. We talked about choice. What if we were more mindful of the choices we have in our lives? That is, what if we were more mindful of the three C's? Instead of just taking it for granted, what if we say, I didn't have to have orange juice this morning. I had a choice. I didn't have to take this route to work. I had a choice. And I am in this together. We're all in this together. It's a sense of community. All I'm saying is our mindfulness or our related to self-talk can influence our self-motivation.
It's so easy to go through life on autopilot. It is so easy.
Yeah, it's a quick fix. Well, we just miss out.
Yeah, exactly. That's
We
that's what
miss
I was going to
out.
say. Yeah, we do. Yeah, yeah, it's just so easy. And I think having that mindfulness, especially with the things that you're talking about, it's so important, especially with serving others. And like I think that's where for me it sometimes breaks down. It's the monotony of life, and I'm passing through, and I forget to help serve others and why we're really doing this. So yeah, it's so important.
And serving others does not have to be a big, expensive, time-consuming thing. Again, it could be simply a thank you. It could be just something basic. Well, one point, we've started something called the Actively Caring for People movement. Okay, AC4P, Actively Caring for People. And in fact, we have a website, ac4p.org. And if you go to that website, you'll hear about this wristband that I'm wearing. It's a simple little wristband. It says actively caring for people, and it has its own identification number on it. Okay. So when I see an act of kindness, I take off this wristband and I give it to that person and I thank them. And I say, thank you. I saw what you did. Thank you. And please take this and join our movement. It's a worldwide movement, actively caring for people. And go to the website, ac4p.org, and register this number and tell the story. How about passing on positive gossip for a change rather than all this negative social media stuff? And post it there. And guess what? Don't keep this. When that's person you've passed it on, tell them they need to pass it on. And it's called a step process. STEP. See an act of kindness, thank them for that act of kindness, enter that behavior at the website, and then P, pass it on to the next person. Now, I'm also wearing a blue wristband. In our country, we have police officers in 3 different states wearing blue wristbands. Same process. They have their own website, actively caring for people, policing. They can purchase wristbands. By the way, we have them for children. We've reduced bullying in schools with this simple process where kids pay attention to positive AC4P behavior, actively caring people. We have the teachers focusing on that. All of a sudden, we're not bullying anymore. We're sharing. We're sharing and we're caring. If you go to the website, we actually have an original song that was produced in Nashville, Tennessee, called "Here to Care, Here to Share and Care."
So that's AC4P. We'll link it down below so people can go follow. And I really do urge people to go follow it. Go on. What's the website again?
Well, and there's 2 websites. One is called AC, the number 4, P, Actively Caring for People.org. But there's another website. It's GELLER, my name, GELLER AC4P. .org or .com, either one works. And there we have training manuals. We have books there that the people can purchase. We have on, again, my wall behind me, we have all kinds of resources that people can read. And this is not common sense. This is based on science. In fact, Jordan, we've been talking here, but it is science, B.F. Skinner, that was science, focusing on the positive consequences and why that's better. That's science. The 3 C's of self-motivation, that's Ed Deasy and Richard Ryan. Research has demonstrated. So all of this, the notion of empowerment, self-efficacy, response efficacy, and outcome expectancy, that's Albert Bandura. So my point is, this is all based on psychological science. It's not a journalist coming up with his or her own ideas, or a lawyer trying to talk about motivation. It's science.
I love it, and genuinely, please, people who are listening, just go down to the links below and follow that. The resources will be worth it for sure. I love the idea of the band. I think that's fantastic. So I love the idea of that. There's one question that I think some people who are stuck in a negative feedback loop. How do you know that all of this would be worth doing?
Well, the word I would use, one word, science. Positive psychology. I mean, the research shows positive psychology is a study of happiness. And we know what makes people happy. By the way, money does not make people happy. If you have enough for your own personal resources and so forth, more money, unless you give it away to support others, all of a sudden is happiness. So the research has demonstrated that serving others increases happiness, but that's easier said than done. People have to experience that, That's why I go to the simple thing of just saying thank you. How does it make you just say thank you? But, by the way, in our country, we are raised to be individuals. We depend on our parents, the guardians, to take care of us. Then we can't wait to become teenagers to be independent. But the mature individual, I used this word before, moves from independent to interdependent. Interdependent. Another related word is systems thinking. See the big picture. Folks are all in this together. Nobody can go it alone. You'd like to go it alone, but it's not even as much fun going with others. And by the way, I'm more of an introvert, far more than an, but I still get pleasure by interacting with others, even as introverts. But my point is, interdependent is the mature organization, the mature individual, the mature mindset.
Well, that was one of the last things I was going to ask you about is with you doing lectures and working with so many students over the years, of how to deal with that overwhelming feeling. And I think a lot of what you're saying is it's coming down to being a part of a community and being involved in that way.
And by the way, you say overwhelming. Let's understand the difference between stress and distress. Having a lot to do, stress. When someone says they're stressed, I say good. Good simply means I've got things to do. This program where you were stressed, we had a process to do, but you weren't overwhelmed. The negative word is distress. The difference between stress and distress is the perception of control. I'm in control. I'm motivated. By the way, the best way to get unmotivated or to start procrastinating, a word we talked earlier, is to feel that I'm not in control. I don't have the competence to handle this. What's the answer to that? I mean, I don't have a quick fix answer to that. It's kind of like step back and start small, step by step, set some goals. My point is, sometimes we do get overwhelmed and we get the word I think about is distress. And by the way, that's science. Psychologists have demonstrated that distress has the negative connotation, the negative repercussions. But stress simply means I'm motivated. I got things to do, man.
I love it. I feel like I could just keep asking you questions, and we could go through this a lot. So I wanted to ask you, when the world opens up, can we come out and do a piece with you? I'd love to come and interview you and meet you in person. It'd be really cool.
Oh yeah, man.
Love it.
All you have to do is convince me we're going to reach a bunch of people. And by the way, here's the way you convince people. If indeed it is true that people are interested, if they're not interested in what we have to say, who's listening, like maybe you'll let me know how many people listened into this and maybe we get some feedback,
That'd be fantastic.
good or bad, but maybe we know whether what we've done here was worthwhile for somebody. And maybe people have some follow-up questions. You make a list, and Jordan, we meet again and talk about those questions that people bring in. Maybe have an open invite. Any questions related to our discussion today? Write them down, and if you have enough, we'll do this again.
Please, that would be fantastic. I think, yeah, I'll put that out to everyone. Is if you have any questions, yeah, please write them down below, or email us, or send them over on Instagram, and we can get them over. Because I feel like the way in which you talk about this is completely different to anyone in the motivation world right now, and I feel there's a lot more practical application for it. So I feel people will get a lot more from it. And so far, we've not had a video where someone hasn't messaged us privately and said this helped with this. So I really do feel like it will help a lot of people. Where can people find you personally?
My email is esgeller@VT for Virginia Tech .edu. But you can also go to that GELLERAC4P.com if you want to know more about the movement, or you want to get involved in the wristbands and that ac4p.org. So that's we've got that going. But yeah, I'd love to hear from people. But if they send in their questions, they choose what questions to ask. And if they have some questions, we do another show someday, man. But let me tell you that you just made my day. But listen, email is the best way to communicate with me. Email esgeller@vt.edu, and I can send people manuscripts and papers, and there's all kinds of other topics very much related to our conversation today. As you know, we covered a lot of different topics.
Yeah, and I'm hoping if anyone wants to dive in deeper, they'll reach out as well. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure. I really do appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordan. See, you saying that, I feel it. You made my day.
Wow. For me, I mean, I always say this. That was a fantastic interview. I personally learned so much, and I love to be able to speak to a professional about things that I was struggling with, or things that I feel like I'm lacking in. And hopefully those conversations lead to lessons that you can also take on board. I'm very, very grateful for Dr. Geller's time. I hope that you've learned something. Please send him an email. Please go over to the website. The website sounds amazing. It's something I'm going to sign up for. I'll probably get one of these bands, get a few bands for everyone in the company. And hopefully the team Mulligan Brothers will carry on that trend, and we'll bring it over to Nottingham in the UK, and hopefully we can be a part of that. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I'm so thankful that I get to do this, so I appreciate it. Please subscribe for more. Follow us on Instagram at Jordan Mulligan Brother, at William Mulligan Brother, at Luke Mulligan Brother. If you want to see projects like this in the future and see us go out to interview people in the States when the borders finally open up, please consider becoming a Mulligan Brothers member over on the Mulligan Brothers main channel. And also, there are some, I've not got it on now, but the Inspire Change t-shirts. It helps support the channel, and I do appreciate it. As always, thank you for watching. And as Scott Geller said, he wants to make a difference. So as we say, please go inspire some change. Whether it is waving at someone who's letting you go, whether it's opening a door for somebody, whether it's paying for someone's coffee or getting a meal for the guy on the street. Go inspire some change. It doesn't have to be grand. Just go do something. As always, thank you for watching. Have a blessed and productive day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.